Greetings! Going to work today on my fourth layout using the Hello Lovely paper pack and the Workshops Your Way kit that comes with the papers, complements, some gems and some ribbon. So what I'm actually doing is I'm just going to play with some of the gorgeous close to my heart watercolour paints here, and I'm using our water brush, and I've just done a splatter effect on the background, and I've used some of the yellow and some of the orange. And I'm doing this nice and quick and fast because I'm going to tuck this aside and let this dry while I work through some of the other ideas. Okay, so just by bashing the brush onto my finger, I'm able to leave these splatters and let this dry. So I've given this time to dry, and I am choosing some papers that I might put with my daughter at what's sort of locally, it's probably a local famous area of the bra fence over in Cardrona and Wanaka, and it was just kind of a fun place to do some silly photos. And so playing with some of the gorgeous papers from the set, having a think, having a look, making some choices about what I want to do with the photo. And I'm kind of wanting to carry on the lines of this photograph in the sense that it sort of it gets smaller into distance. You can see that fence line sort of starts like a slightly taller line, and this gets shorter as it zooms away into the distance. And so I'm wanting to think of something using that linear look, or that the fact that it's wider on the right hand side, and try and make my page sort of match that, or draw or bring you into that component. So I'm playing with different papers. It's just part of that decision making process that goes on behind the scenes. So playing with the papers, thinking about where it sits, and finally deciding that actually I'm just going to use it as it is, and I'm going to leave the zip strip on it. I'm going to add some more strips along the side, including the gorgeous blush shimmer ribbon that comes in this Workshops Your Way kit, and leaving that there, and having a look at what I can use as a title on this. And so I decided to use the scrapbooking stamps. These are an extra purchase, but the Hello Lovely scrapbooking ones, these are $30.50, and the words on, I've loved using the words on this. They make beautiful titles with fussy cutting, and also just straight with the ink. Turning my mat over because it's got a nice foam side, and so when I stamp on to my objects with this behind, it leaves a nicer impression of the ink. Now the word love I have inked up, and I'm sticking that straight onto it, and it's going to sit down there as the title. So I've sprayed the acrylic stamp. I've used the scrubber to wipe it down, peeling it off and sticking it back onto the stamp backing sheet so it's ready for use next time. Okay, so there's my self-created background, turning the mat over and laying that down. Okay, my trimmer. Looking forward to my close to my heart trimmer arriving. If you listen to my last video, you'll note that I said a similar thing there. I've created these layouts all in one afternoon and evening, wanting to see what I can come up with using these papers, totally inspired by them, and just giving it a go and seeing what I can come up with. So therefore it's all sort of happened over the same day. So I decided to use the green zip strip from one of the other patterned paper sheets in the set, and I decided to keep the two pink tones together with the green one sort of on the outside, tying in kind of with the grasses and the background in the Cardrona landscape. Okay, so having a look at different things, and I decided to use the stamps that come with the die cuts, and so I'm putting these through the Cuttlebug, and I'm going to just use two of the same kind of the oblong frame, and I'm going to use one of the kind of ribbon or banner frame to put these through, and I'm going to stamp these. So this kit comes separately. So this is the Hello Lovely card making stamps, but you can also get it in a thin cuts bundle, and that's $49.50 New Zealand, and you can combine the die cuts and the stamps together. Less fussy cutting. Okay, so putting these through. Now I've got my 3 banner pieces, and I'm actually going to use these for journaling on the page very shortly, but I just wanted to show you that Cuddlebug process. Okay, so I'm going to stick those down there. I could leave them as they are, but I'm actually going to stamp the ink on them. One of the beauty of the acrylics stamps that Close to My Heart has is that using the acrylics block, you can see through them, so you know exactly where you're stamping. And so that's the same case with these strips. Now I didn't use the white daisy cardstock here. I've actually used the colonial white, and I've cut these out on the colonial white cardstock as well to match that. It does take a little bit of lining up, a little bit of fiddliness, making sure I scrub my stamps afterwards to make sure they're nice and clean. Okay, lining them up, pressing them down. And getting ready. Okay, so I had 2 of the more square framed, and then I had one that was slightly curlier. Inking these up, stamping it in the right spot with my foam mat in the background so I get a good impression with the stamp. And there we got 3 journaling tags, and I guess you could say I made them all by myself, which is quite nice when you look at a page and you know you kind of did a lot of bits and pieces without it being pre-manufactured or pre-made. So sticking down these longer strips. And using the Tombow adhesive with my blush shimmer trim as well, and also for the zip strip, just putting this a couple of times down the page before sticking it onto the background that I created earlier. Okay, I'm inking up the edge of my photograph. Letting it dry a little bit before I put it on the page, because I've learnt through trial and error that it actually, the photo takes a little bit longer to dry with the inking. Okay, so even when I'm sitting there placing it, I didn't want to put it down quite yet. I wanted to make sure that it's going to be in the right place before I stuck it down, just in case there's a little bit of ink residue that's sitting there. Okay, so sticking these on, again using the same Tombow adhesive. 3 of them together tucked in there, and the page, apart from the fact that the journaling is still missing, is looking a little bit bare still. So it's time to have a little bit of a think of what else I'm going to use, and I'm going to use some more of the stamps from the card making set. Interesting that it's all card making stamps on a scrapbook layout, but they aren't refined to just one area. So having a look at where I'm going to put these, I want to use the floral stamp that I used in my last layout as well, but this time I'm going to do something more with it and make it more of a feature than it being something tucked into the background. So making sure I clean up that stamp so it's good to go for next time. Okay, and I'm going to use the hearts. And I'm just going to sort of use 1st, 2nd and 3rd generation stamping in different places around the layout to just create something a little bit different, I guess, or just to give a different element or texture to it. And so there was a cute little heart that came in this set as well. There's actually 3 different hearts, and the spotty one there's also got a thin cut that you can use. That means that you could have the heart cut out perfectly as well and then stamp into that. Okay, so still having a play with these stamps, cleaning them up. And I'm going to add a little bit of journaling onto these banners. So the top one I'm just sort of saying where it was, and just a little bit of a note about what was going on, what was being said. It was probably one of my favourite stops on a bit of a photo walk that my daughter and I went on. Okay, so even though I sort of thought I was finished, I'm not. I've decided that I will colour in the beautiful floral stamp that's from the Hello Lovely card making set. And so I'm going to use the Close to My Heart watercolours for this. I'm going to try and do a little bit of shading within it. So I'm using a slightly darker yellow in the centre parts, and then moving out to a slightly lighter colouring, a little bit more water and a little bit of a lighter colour onto the outside edges. So I'm using the finer tipped water brush for this. I love these water brushes, just being able to not have a cup of water for one of our cats to knock over. Yes, the cats shouldn't be on the bench, but when you're busy doing work and things like this, they're always very interested in it, especially with all the things that are kind of moving around on the table and the surface. But these fine tip brushes just work beautifully. I love that I can take them places with me. They don't have to be I can go and do watercolouring somewhere else. It doesn't have to be at home, so I'm not tied down to having water and things like that around me. Takes a bit of time adding these details and also allowing it time to dry. So the water brush that I used was the small round water brush, and these are $10.50, and the notes in the book just says fill with water and use with watercolour paints, small round tip brush. These would also be fabulous with our watercolour pencils. You can do your colouring with the pencil, and then you can watercolour over it. And so there's quite a few different ways you can use this. You can also use this with some of the inks in different ways as well, but that's something that can be explored at a later time. So making sure things are stuck down and having a look at the page, and as per usual I've made a bit of a mess in an area, and it's an opportunity to think, okay, how can I creatively problem solve this? And I had a bit of an idea, and I ended up really loving what I did here. And so it's okay not to get it perfect, but just try something out, see what happens, and just go with the flow a little bit. So here I decided that I would cover this up with another of the stamps, and doing a little bit of masking because I didn't want to stamp on the craft mat too much, and just tucking it down the sides. But to keep it continuous with the other stamp that I've used to the bottom left of the photograph, I needed to colour this in with the watercolour paints as well. So using the same colours for the pieces of this stamp that you can see, I'm just going to tuck those in and add the details into those bits there. Same brush, same paints. Just like before when I talked about cutting those banners that I use for the journaling out, there's something about when you've created the background yourself, when you've coloured in the stamps yourself, and you've done a lot of these things, it feels more special and like you've got more ownership over it. Thanks for watching.